Hello, welcome back to my channel. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made this flexible flower paste bow and how I stenciled this beautiful Baroque black and white bottom tier. I have used this flexible flower paste recipe on flowers before, but I thought I wanted to try it on something else. You could use it for anything, but I wanted to try it with a bow because a lot of times when you're doing a bow out of fondant or gum paste, it's hard to get that kind of drapey look to it because with fondant, sometimes it sets up too slow and it droops too much. And with gum paste, it sets up too fast and you get cracking. So let's try it with the flexible flower paste. And I was really happy with the way it turned out. I'm adding my final coat of buttercream to the bottom tier. I'm using a crusting American buttercream. You could use a Swiss meringue if you want, but I wanted the buttercream to be bright white, and I find that's a little easier to get with a crusting American. Not to mention that's what I typically use is the crusting American. But to remove any air bubbles, sometimes, my recipe is pretty bubble free, but sometimes if it sits overnight, you can get a little bit of bubbling. So a way to counteract that is to use a piping bag and cut a smaller hole in the tip, because what that does is as it is forced through that small hole in the bag, a lot of those air bubbles will just kind of pop on their way out. And it's kind of like an ASMR satisfying thing. You can kind of feel them and hear the bubbles popping. If you know what I mean, hopefully you know what I mean, because that probably sounds a little weird. But it is. It's very gratifying. And now I'm making the flexible flower paste. I will put the recipe below. But what it basically is, but really all it is glucose, a clear oil. I use vegetable oil, and then cornstarch. That's really all there is to it. And that glucose is what gives it that elasticity. There's enough in there that it definitely adds a little bit more longer lasting flexibility in it. I mixed the wet together, heated them up. I combined the dry. There's actually, what else is in there? It's not just cornstarch. There's tylose powder too. Sorry, I forgot about that. So mix your dry, mix your wet, heat the wet, add the wet to the dry. Add a little bit more of the cornstarch and you knead it together, and then you have your flexible flower paste. And it doesn't look real flexible right here, but as it sits, it becomes a lot more flexible. And at this point, I had added my food coloring to it. You can use whatever food coloring you want. I ended up using Color Mill water-based. It's the blush is what I used on this. And then you just roll it out like you would normally a gum paste or fondant or even modeling chocolate. Modeling chocolate's a good way to go for this too, but I went with this time. So I cut 2 of the tails. I wanted them longer, one longer than the other. Cut an angle on the bottom, and I just gathered the top and set that aside. And I did that twice. You just kind of make an M shape out of that top. You just kind of accordion it to get those pleats. And then we're going to make the bow. And I wanted it to be a double bow. Make it a little different again. So I made one piece a little taller and a little longer than the other one, so that the back bow is bigger than the one in the front. And then I cut another piece to be the piece that goes around the middle of them. It just needs to be long enough that will wrap around both of them and kind of combine them together. And I just accordion folded that also. You can use skewers or dowels if you want to, place them underneath to help you create those folds. I've done that in past videos also. I'll try to remember to add a link to those. We'll see if I do. I will try to remember to add a link to those. But basically, I cut those, I gather it in the middle, that M shape again. I cut those hard edges, corners off the pieces that fold in, tuck them in, turn it the other way, and this is your front. And just using a little bit of water to get that pinched part in the middle to stay together. And then add some rolled up paper towel in the bows to help them hold their shape. I don't know if you'd need that with this product, but better safe than sorry. And this is our bigger piece. I did exactly the same thing. Just adding some water where I need it to stick. If it's not sticking enough with just the water, you can put a little piece of the flour paste in some water, just a little bowl, like a little quarter, not even a quarter cup. Just like take a quarter cup of water and add some of the gum paste or the flour paste, whatever you want to call it, same thing. And then heat it up until the flour paste dissolves. And then you have a little bit stronger of a glue. And then I just lined them up, put one on top of the other. I didn't even leave any drying time, guys. I just kind of just kept going. And then added that middle piece, and I'm just rearranging the pleats so that they look a little bit like I want them to. And here this is for the stenciling. I love this stencil. This is an Angela Morrison stencil. I will add a link in the description here below. She has gorgeous stencils and texture mats. You'll have to check her out if you haven't already. But the buttercream, I just added a little bit of a little bit of corn syrup to make it a little bit more elastic, a little bit more stretchy. I don't know why. I think it just goes on smoother, personally. I don't always do that, but this time I did. And you want to make sure that you start in the middle with your stencil and work your way out so that it's not moving around. I did have this day, guys, this day was so humid. We had storms going on. That's why the lighting's a little off too. You can only do so much with artificial light. It was so dark and dreary and humid and damp that I was having problems with everything. So the stencil did kind of bleed underneath the stencil a little bit there. But I do go back and try to clean it up as much as I can. And in between panels, you're going to want to put your cake in the freezer so that it dries and sets up before you do your next one. I was a little hesitant to stick them too close together because of the humidity. Sorry, I keep hitting my microphone. Because of the humidity, I was afraid that it would never dry enough so that so I could place like the stencil over, a little overlap over the section I had done before. I wasn't willing to take that chance. So there's a little bit of a gap there, but I do go back in and kind of hand paint with some of that buttercream to try to tie those together. And there is a gap in the back there. If this was for an order, I would go ahead and do a little bit of a stencil in that too. But like I said, I was fighting humidity, so I just decided that's the back. I'm just going to leave that at the back. It's not going to affect our purposes here today. But if you're doing this for an order, go ahead and fill in that little back section also. Very rarely do our pieces match up perfectly to where we don't have a gap. And I'm just using a little, like I said, pointy paintbrush to kind of blend in the seams. And I had removed any extra pieces. And I just used a little bit of buttercream to attach the top tier to the bottom. This is another Franken cake. So normally you'd put dowels. I'd put 4 to 5 dowels in between in that bottom tier before putting the buttercream and your top tier on. But this cake, it's been around long enough. I've used it in enough videos that I don't need any dowels. It's firm. Trust me. Nobody would want to eat this cake. This is just for demonstration purposes, and it would be the same if it were a fresh cake. And now I'm just arranging our bow. I did cut that extra strip to wrap around, and I know that one side is not pleated very well, the right side, but I knew it was going to be covered up, so I didn't worry about it too much. That was basically just to give it the look of the ribbon being wrapped all the way around, and just attach it with buttercream and arrange those tassels, the tails, the way you want them. And I didn't add it in there, but I did do a little thin band around the bottom also with the same product. I just cut it into about a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch section. So I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something, and we'll catch you on the next one.